Welcome to True Soul Chronicles, where wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to do what's right when no one's watching. We tell stories of hidden identities and revealed truths, of billionaires who disguise themselves as ordinary people to discover who deserves their trust, of everyday heroes, waitresses, nurses, drivers, who choose kindness over survival, dignity over compromise. Here, the true king isn't the one wearing the crown. It's the person who treats a stranger with respect when there's nothing to gain. In the fake elite, they're exposed not by investigators, but by their own cruelty. Every story ends with poetic justice. Every villain faces consequences. Every hero gets the recognition they earned through character, not connections. Because real power isn't having everything, it's knowing what matters. Subscribe for weekly stories that restore your faith in humanity, one undercover billionaire at a time. The mirror in the Charleston Harbor Hotel penthouse suite reflected two men. One wore a Patek Philippe watch worth more than most Americans earned in a year. The other wore a $15 Timex with a cracked crystal, purchased 3 hours ago from a Walmart off Highway 17. Lysander Cole had become an expert at erasing himself. He removed the Patek Philippe first, always first, because that watch had been a gift to himself the day Forbes confirmed his billionaire status. The weight of it had felt like validation then. Now it felt like a chain. He placed it in the hotel safe with the reverence one might show a venomous snake. Respect for its power, relief at its containment. The canvas Carhartt jacket came next. He'd bought it off a construction worker outside a Home Depot for $60 cash. The man had looked confused. "You sure, buddy? Things got paint stains." But Lysander had insisted. Those paint stains were authenticity money couldn't buy. The jacket smelled of motor oil and sawdust, of 12-hour shifts and calloused hands. It smelled like the life he'd lived at 22, before the empire, before the isolation that came with wealth so vast it functioned as a moat. His phone buzzed against the marble countertop. Cassandra Vale, his chief of operations. "Boss, quarterly reports show Lavella's profit margins suspiciously high. Food costs down 34% with no menu changes. You sure about this inspection?" Lysander's jaw tightened. 34%. That wasn't efficiency. That was theft dressed in an Excel spreadsheet. He texted back with thumbs that had signed billion-dollar contracts and now touched a phone screen with deliberate pressure. "That's exactly why I'm going. See you at midnight." The transformation took 18 minutes. Designer shoes became scuffed steel-toe boots. Italian wool slacks became paint-stained denim. The silver in his hair, distinguished in boardrooms, threatening in back alleys, disappeared beneath a faded beanie that had seen better decades. When he looked in the mirror again, Lysander Cole was gone. Lee Carter, handyman, stared back. The walk from the hotel to La Vela took him through the heart of Charleston's tourist corridor. He passed Rainbow Row, those pastel antebellum houses that made people forget the city was built on rice, plantations, and human bondage. Street musicians played jazz near the market, their saxophone notes floating on humid evening air that tasted of salt water and approaching autumn. Couples dressed for expensive dinners hurried past him without a glance. Invisible. Perfect. La Vela's entrance appeared around the corner of East Bay Street, a brick archway strung with Edison bulbs, a brass plaque reading "Established 2019, polished to mirror brightness." Through floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see his kingdom. White tablecloths like fresh snow, crystal chandeliers throwing light like scattered diamonds, waitstaff moving in choreographed precision. He'd built this. Every detail, from the exposed brick to the wine list, featuring bottles that cost more than Lee Carter could earn in a month. And now he would enter it as a beggar. His hand touched the door handle, brass, warmed by the South Carolina sun, and pushed. The temperature changed instantly. Not the air conditioning, which hummed at a perfect 68 degrees. The social temperature. The hostess, young and polished in black slacks and a smile as artificial as sweet and low, glanced at him with eyes that calculated his net worth in half a second. Worthless, those eyes decided. "Can I help you?" Her tone suggested she hoped he was lost. "Table for one, please." Lysander kept his voice rougher, flattened the vowels the way construction crews did. The hostess, name tag reading Sienna, looked at her reservation book with the studied concentration of someone buying time to form a polite rejection. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're fully booked tonight. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at—" "I see 5 empty tables." Lysander gestured toward the dining room with a hand that bore no rings, no manicure, nothing but the faint scar from a sheet metal cut he'd gotten at 19. A man materialized from the kitchen corridor, like smoke taking form. Tall, mid-40s, wearing a Tom Ford suit that screamed compensation for something missing inside. His cologne arrived 3 seconds before his body, something expensive and cloying, the olfactory equivalent of fool's gold. The name tag read Nolan Creed, General Manager. "Is there a problem, Sienna?" "This gentleman would like a table, but we have reservations only." Nolan's eyes scanned Lysander with TSA efficiency. Paint stains, worn jacket, cheap watch, conclusion formed, judgment rendered, sentence delivered in the space between heartbeats. Not worth the oxygen. But Lysander knew the law. South Carolina's public accommodation statutes didn't care about dress codes. South Carolina accommodation statutes require service regardless of fine. Nolan's smile was sharp enough to fillet a fish. Sienna, seat him at table 3. Table 3. Lysander knew this table intimately. He'd approved the floor plan himself 18 months ago. Positioned directly beside the entrance, it caught the draft of cold air every time the door opened. It sat next to the service station where waiters scraped plates, where the illusion of elegance collapsed into the machinery of commercial dining. It was the table reserved for punishment. As Sienna led him across the dining room, Lysander cataloged details with the attention of a man whose fortune was built on noticing what others missed. Nolan's suit jacket gaped slightly at the shoulders, tailored for someone 20 pounds heavier, probably bought secondhand. The way his hand touched his watch obsessively, seeking reassurance from a status symbol, the micro-expression of disgust when a busboy accidentally brushed his sleeve. These were the tells of a man playing a part. Sienna handed him a menu, bound in leather soft as a threat. "Your server will be right with you." And then she appeared. Alara Wynn moved through the dining room like someone navigating a minefield of courtesy and survival. 28, maybe. Auburn hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked painful. Eyes the color of storm clouds over the Atlantic. Gray, turbulent, holding weather that hadn't yet broken. She wore the standard uniform, black slacks, white button-down, black apron, tied with the precision of someone who couldn't afford mistakes. But while other servers projected polished professionalism, Alara projected something Lysander recognized from his own mirror on the worst nights, exhaustion that came not from hours worked, but from weight carried. "Good evening, sir. Can I start you with something to drink?" Her voice held genuine kindness, not the performative warmth of customer service training, but the authentic gentleness of someone who still believed treating people well mattered, even when the world had given her every reason to stop believing. Lysander met her eyes. In that moment, he made a decision that would change both their lives. "What's the cheapest thing on the menu?" A test. Other servers would smirk. Sienna would definitely smirk. Alara simply turned to the beverage page, her expression unchanged. "That would be our filtered water with lemon, complimentary." "I'll have that, please." As she wrote it down, careful handwriting on a carbon copy pad, the kind restaurants used before tablets took over, Lysander noticed it. A hospital wristband, worn and faded, the purple text barely legible, peeking from beneath her left sleeve like a secret trying to escape. MUSC Oncology/Visitor. She caught him looking. Their eyes met. And in that split second, Lysander saw what he'd spent 17 years searching for in the faces of strangers. Genuine pain, being carried with dignity, someone drowning silently, refusing to pull others under. "I'll get that right away," Alara said softly, then disappeared toward the service station. Lysander pulled out his phone, pretending to browse social media the way Lee Carter might, but his attention was focused on the restaurant's ecosystem. He watched Nolan bark orders at a busboy who flinched like a beaten dog. He watched Sienna laugh too loudly at a patron's weak joke, her desperation for tips hanging in the air like cheap perfume. He watched the kitchen door swing open and close, glimpsing chaos behind the elegant facade. Marco, the head chef, arguing with someone about wrong shipment, wrong color, wrong everything. And he watched Alara return with his water, placing it on the table with a coaster positioned just so, with a smile that cost her something to maintain. She was protecting someone. He'd seen that expression before, in foster care, in the faces of kids who took beatings to shield younger siblings. The question was, who was she protecting, and from what? Lysander opened the menu to the entree section. His eyes found the Costa Azul Royal Seafood Platter. $295, the restaurant's signature dish, the one food bloggers photographed and anniversary couples saved for. He signaled for Alara to return. Time to turn up the pressure and see what broke. When Alara returned to table 3, she'd already constructed the script in her mind. He would ask about the cheapest entree, maybe the $18 house salad with its apologetic portion of mixed greens. She would kindly suggest it came with complimentary bread. She'd become an expert at this particular choreography, helping people save face when they'd wandered into a restaurant that existed several tax brackets above their reality. But the man in the worn Carhartt jacket looked up from the menu and said, with the calm of someone ordering coffee, "I'll have the Costa Azul Royal Seafood Platter." Alara's pen froze midair. The Costa Azul was La Vela's crown jewel, butter-poached Maine lobster tail glistening like edible wealth, Alaskan king crab legs arranged like a geometric proof of luxury, Mediterranean prawns the size of a child's fist, Kumamoto oysters resting on crushed ice in a sterling silver vessel, seared scallops swimming in truffle beurre blanc that cost $40 per ounce. It was the dish Instagram influencers photographed from 7 angles, the dish anniversary couples saved for months to order. The dish that made waitresses like Alara calculate their potential tip with the fever dream hope of gambling. Addicts, it was $295. She looked at him, truly looked this time. The way nurses learn to assess patients in triage. The paint stains on his jeans weren't artfully distressed denim from some Tribeca boutique. They were real, ground into the fabric by days of manual labor. The canvas jacket had a tear near the left pocket, mended with thread that didn't quite match, the repair work of someone who couldn't afford replacement. The Timex watch had a cracked crystal that caught the chandelier light and scattered it like broken promises. "Sir, I just want to make sure you're aware that dish is $295. And he said it the way someone might confirm the weather. I know. Alara's mind performed calculations at the speed of desperation. This scenario had played out before. Someone orders extravagantly to impress a date who never showed, eats half, then claims the food was subpar, and demands it removed from the bill. Or worse, orders everything, eats everything, then suddenly realizes they left their wallet in the car that mysteriously won't start. And she knew, with the sick certainty of experience, that Nolan would make her responsible for the loss. He'd done it before, to a server named Marcus who'd quit rather than pay back a $300 walkout. The debt had followed Marcus anyway. Nolan had sent it to collections out of pure spite. "I'll put that in for you right away," she said, her voice steady even as her stomach performed acrobatics. As she turned toward the kitchen, a hand gripped her elbow. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to command. Nolan's cologne hit her before his words did. Something expensive, trying desperately to smell like old money, and achieving only the olfactory equivalent of a bounced check. "My office, now." The words landed like a gavel. Alara glanced back at table 3, where the man was calmly scrolling his phone as if ordering a $300 meal in paint-stained work clothes was the most natural thing in the world. She followed Nolan past the bar, through a door marked "Staff Only" in brass letters that caught the light like a warning, and into his office. The space smelled of leather and ambition. A 14 by 12 room, trying very hard to convince visitors it was a corner suite in Manhattan. Fake certificates lined the walls. Culinary institutes Alara had Googled once and found didn't exist. A motivational poster proclaimed, "Excellence is not a skill, it's an attitude," in letters aggressive enough to constitute assault. Nolan closed the door. The click of the latch sounded like a prison lock. Did table 3 really just order the Costa Azul? "Yes, sir." "Look at him, Alara." Nolan leaned against his desk, arms crossed, in a posture that management books probably called projecting authority, but that actually projected insecurity wrapped in a Tom Ford suit. "Does he look like he has $295? "I don't judge customers by their appearance, sir." The words came out with more steel than she'd intended. "That's not what I asked." Nolan's voice shifted from velvet to razor wire. "When that check comes and he can't pay, when he does the whole 'I forgot my wallet' routine, or claims food poisoning to get it comped, who do you think corporate will blame? You or me?" Alara's throat tightened. She needed this job the way drowning people need air. Her mother's hospital bill, from last week alone, was $4,200. The immunotherapy trial, doctor. Rashid had mentioned, the one that might buy Catherine another year, maybe 18 months if God was feeling generous, cost $8,000 per cycle. Minimum 4 cycles required. She was already $23,000 in medical debt. She'd borrowed from friends who could barely afford their own rent. She'd sold her car, her laptop, her late father's vintage record collection that he'd spent 30 years curating. This job was all she had left. This job was her mother's lifeline, and Nolan knew it. "What do you want me to do?" Her voice came out quieter than she'd intended, and she hated herself for it. "Go back out there and ask for advance payment. Credit card authorization before the kitchen starts cooking." He said it like he was being reasonable, like he was protecting the restaurant from fraud, rather than humiliating a customer based on classist assumptions. We don't do that here. It'll embarrass him. Then he shouldn't order food he can't afford." Nolan paused, letting the silence stretch like a torture technique. "Or, here's option 2. You personally guarantee the payment. If he walks, I'll garnish it from your wages." The room tilted slightly. "You can't legally guarantee me." Nolan opened the door with the flourish of someone who'd just won an argument. "Option 1 or option 2. Choose fast. The kitchen's waiting, and Marco's already in a mood about the shipment delays." Alara walked back to table 3, feeling like she was approaching a cliff edge in the dark. The man, Mr. Carter, according to the reservation she'd checked, was still looking at his phone. He seemed utterly calm, almost serene, like someone who'd made peace with whatever consequences were coming. "Sir, I apologize, but our manager requires that for orders over $250, we collect payment authorization in advance." The words tasted like copper and shame. "If you'd prefer to modify your order to something more, no need." He pulled out a wallet, battered brown leather held together with what looked disturbingly like duct tape. From it, he extracted a credit card, not a flashy metal Amex, not even a standard platinum card that announced wealth with understated typography. A basic Visa with a magnetic strip so worn it looked like it might not scan. He handed it to her with steady hands. "Run it for 400. I'll tip well." The card felt like evidence of something, though Alara couldn't determine what crime. The name embossed on it read L. Carter. As she walked to the POS system behind the bar, her hands trembled enough that she had to steady them against the counter. She swiped the card. The screen thought for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Approved. Available credit, $47,300. 00 Alara blinked, read it again. $47,300 on a credit card belonging to a man whose jacket was held together with mismatched thread. She processed the $400 authorization, printed the receipt with fingers that had forgotten how to work properly, and returned to table 3 on legs that felt borrowed from someone else's body. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. Your meal will be out shortly." He nodded, but as she set down the receipt, he spoke quietly enough that only she could hear. "You didn't want to ask me for advance payment." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of observed fact, delivered with the precision of someone who made their living reading people. "No, sir, I didn't." "But your manager paid you." Alara hesitated. The safe answer was, "It's restaurant policy." The true answer was, "He threatened to garnish my wages if you walked out on the bill because he's a bully who weaponizes people's desperation." She chose diplomacy. "It's restaurant policy, sir." "No, L," Carter said, and his voice suddenly carried an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "It's not." For just a moment, Alara saw something different in his eyes. Not the soft resignation of a working man accepting another small indignity, something harder, more focused. The look of someone who knew exactly what game was being played and had already calculated 17 moves ahead. "I'll make sure your table has everything it needs," she managed, then retreated. At the POS station, she glanced back. L. Carter was watching Nolan's office door with the patience of a predator. As she pushed through the swinging kitchen door to deliver the order, she heard voices raised in argument, Marco's Italian accent, thick with frustration, a delivery driver's defensive snarl, and underneath it all, the sick certainty that whatever was wrong at La Vela ran deeper than one manager's cruelty. She froze just outside the door, listening. Alara shouldn't be listening. Professional protocol dictated she drop the order slip with Marco and return to her other tables. Table 7 needed wine refills. Table 12 had requested dessert menus 5 minutes ago, and the couple at table 9 kept glancing around with the particular impatience of people accustomed to immediate service. But the delivery driver's voice carried through the swing door with the clarity of a confession, and what he was saying turned her blood to ice water. "Look, man, I just drive the truck. You got a problem with the product? Take it up with Neptune Imports. I deliver what they load." Alara pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering against her ribs like something trying to escape. Through the circular window in the kitchen door, she could see Marco, 52 years old, grandfather to twins. He'd never met because they lived in Naples with his daughter, holding a lobster tail up to the fluorescent light. The meat had a grayish tinge instead of the pristine white she'd served 1,000 times. Even from 6 feet away, through reinforced glass, Alara could see something was wrong. The flesh looked almost translucent in places, the texture wrong, like meat that had been frozen and thawed too many times, or stored at temperatures that encouraged bacterial romance. Marco's Italian accent thickened, the way it always did when emotion overwhelmed English grammar. "These are supposed to be Maine lobster tails. Premium. I don't even know what this is. The color is wrong. The smell is wrong. Everything is wrong." The delivery driver, weathered face, Neptune Imports uniform with an oil stain on the left shoulder, the exhausted posture of someone who'd made this argument 12 times already today, shifted his weight. "Invoice says Maine lobster. That's what I brought. You refusing the shipment?" Before Marco could respond, Nolan materialized from the walk-in refrigerator like a stage magician. All dramatic timing and calculated entrance, he examined the lobster tail for exactly 2 seconds. Not long enough to actually assess quality, just long enough to establish dominance. "Looks fine to me." His voice carried the board authority of someone who'd already decided the outcome before the trial began. "Marco, sign the invoice." "Nolan, this is not..." "Sign the invoice." The temperature in the kitchen dropped, despite the industrial stoves pumping heat into air already thick with the smell of searing fish and melting butter. Nolan leaned closer to Marco, his voice dropping to a whisper that Alara could somehow still hear, the way you can hear ice cracking beneath your feet. "Unless you'd like me to mention to Immigration Services that your work visa renewal application might have some inconsistencies?" Marco's face went pale. The color of the contaminated lobster meat, Alara thought with hysterical precision. She knew his story. Everyone knew his story. He'd been working for 2 years to bring his wife and daughter from Italy, navigating bureaucratic mazes and legal fees that consumed 60% of his income. His daughter had sent him a video last week of his granddaughters taking their first steps. He'd watched it 17 times, tears streaming down his face while he prepped vegetables. Marco signed. The delivery driver left. Nolan turned to Marco with a smile that belonged in a Shark Tank. Use it for the well-done orders. Tourists can't tell the difference anyway. Alara stepped back from the door as Nolan exited the kitchen, nearly colliding with her. His cologne, something expensive that smelled like it cost more than her monthly rent, made her eyes water. Eavesdropping, Miss Wynn? No, sir. I was just bringing an order for table 3, the Costa Azul platter. She held up the slip like evidence of innocence. Nolan plucked it from her hand, glanced at it, then at her. Something calculating moved behind his eyes, the look of someone reassessing an asset's value. Well, the drifter actually paid. Miracles do happen. He handed the slip back. Make sure Marco uses the good lobster for this one. We don't want Mr. Carter's refined palate disappointed. The sarcasm was thick enough to choke on. Alara nodded and escaped back to the dining room, her mind reeling like a film reel stuck on repeat. They're serving substituted seafood. They're serving contaminated seafood. They're serving it to every customer in this dining room, including the quiet man at table 3, who just paid $295 for a royal platter that wasn't royal at all. She moved through her other tables on autopilot, smiling, nodding, refilling water glasses with hands that somehow stayed steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. Table 7 got their wine. Table 12 got dessert menus. Table 9 got apologies wrapped in complimentary limoncello, but her mind was spinning through implications like a calculator processing debt. She'd suspected something was wrong for weeks, ever since Nolan started making her reconcile invoices in his office after hours, keeping her late with the promise of administrative bonuses that never quite materialized. The numbers never added up correctly. Costs listed as $60 per pound for lobster that vendor, websites showed, should be $95. Scallops, marked Hokkaido diver, arriving in boxes labeled product of Vietnam, and faded stamps she wasn't supposed to notice. But Marco had just confirmed it, not just substitution, contamination. And that meant every customer in this dining room was being defrauded. Worse, they were being endangered. She should report this to corporate, to the health department, to someone with power and authority, and the ability to stop this before someone got sick or died. But if she did, Nolan would fire her. He'd already threatened it 3 times this month over minor infractions, a dropped wine glass, arriving 4 minutes late after a particularly difficult hospital visit, asking for Sunday off to sit with her mother during a transfusion. And he wouldn't just fire her, he'd blackball her. I know the GM at Husk at FIG at Peninsula Grill, he'd said last week, leaning against his desk in that way that made her skin crawl. One phone call, Alara, and you won't wash dishes in this city. Without this job, she couldn't pay for her mother's treatment. Without the immunotherapy trial, Catherine had maybe 3 months. With it, maybe a year, possibly more. Doctor, Rashid had been clear, speaking in that careful way doctors used when they knew hope was a luxury item. The trial isn't covered by insurance, $8,000 per cycle. Minimum 4 cycles required to assess efficacy. $32,000. Alara was already $23,000 in medical debt. She'd sold everything that wasn't nailed down. She'd borrowed from friends who couldn't afford it. She'd started eating 1 meal a day to stretch her food budget. This job was all she had left. This job was her mother's heartbeat, measured in shifts and tips in the terrible arithmetic of survival. At 7:30, Marco's voice called through the expo window. Order up, table 3. Alara approached and saw the Costa Azul platter in all its fraudulent glory. The lobster tail glistened with butter that couldn't hide the grayish undertone. The crab legs were artfully arranged. The oysters rested on crushed ice in a sterling silver vessel that probably cost more than the actual seafood. But she knew the truth now. This wasn't what the menu promised. This wasn't what Mr. Carter had paid for. And the man at table 3, L. Carter, with his worn jacket and his $47,000 credit limit and his eyes that saw too much, didn't deserve to be lied to. Nobody did. She carried the platter out, set it before him, with the required flourish that felt like participating in a magic trick, where the magician was actively trying to poison the audience. Your Costa Azul Royal Seafood Platter. Is there anything else I can get you? This looks incredible, he said, and she couldn't tell if he meant it or if he was testing her. Enjoy your meal, sir. But she turned to leave. An idea crystallized in her mind. Reckless, dangerous, possibly career-ending. But right, at the server station, she tore off a corner of blank receipt paper. Her hands shook as she wrote, the ballpoint pen running out of ink so that some letters appeared ghostly. Half-formed, don't eat anything else, storage room has issues. Check Nolan's records office. Import goods switched. She folded it small, slipped it into her apron pocket, and waited. 45 minutes later, when Carter signaled for his check, Alara's heart was beating so hard she could hear it in her ears like distant thunder. She processed the payment, added his generous $105 tip to the total, brought the check to his table in the black leather folder, and as she cleared his barely touched platter, he'd eaten only one oyster and a single scallop, she noticed, as if he'd known something was wrong. She slid the folded note beneath the edge of his water glass. Their eyes met. He didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge the note at all. But something in his expression shifted, a recognition, an understanding, as if he'd been waiting for exactly this. The oncology wing at MUSC Medical Center had a particular silence at night, not peaceful, but suspended, like the moment between lightning and thunder. Alara signed in, at the nurse's station, where they knew her by name now, a familiarity that felt more like defeat than welcome. She sanitized her hands with gel that smelled of artificial citrus and chemical promises, then pushed open the door to room 847. Catherine Wynne was awake, which was rare this late. The morphine usually pulled her under by 9, dragging her into sleep that looked more like rehearsal for something permanent. But tonight, her eyes were clear, tracking Alara's movement across the linoleum floor that squeaked with each step. "Baby, you should be sleeping," Catherine said, her voice paper-thin, like words printed on tissue that might tear if handled roughly. "I wanted to check on you." Alara kissed her mother's forehead, which was warm, always warm now, the low-grade fever that wouldn't break no matter what cocktail of antibiotics they tried. "How was dinner?" "Hospital food is hospital food." Catherine managed a smile that used to light up rooms and now barely illuminated her own face. "But the jello was red, this time instead of green, so we're moving up in the world." Alara sat in the chair she'd worn smooth over 3 months of vigils. The vinyl had molded to her body, creating a depression that felt accusatory, physical evidence of time spent watching someone die in slow motion. On the windowsill sat a framed photo, Alara at 8, gap-toothed and proud, holding a spelling bee trophy. Catherine standing behind her, healthy and strong, both arms wrapped around her daughter like a promise that nothing bad could ever reach her. That photo was a liar. "Doctor, Rashid stopped by today," Catherine said carefully, using the tone that meant bad news was coming dressed in gentle words. Alara's stomach clenched. "And?" "He said the standard chemotherapy isn't working anymore. The tumors are growing despite treatment." The words landed like stones thrown into still water, ripples spreading outward into implications Alara didn't want to calculate. She'd known this was coming. "Doctor." Rashid had warned her 2 weeks ago, during a hallway conversation that felt like standing on a gallows, but hearing her mother say it made it real, in a way medical terminology couldn't. "But there's the trial," Alara said quickly, the words tumbling out with desperate momentum. "The immunotherapy trial. Dr. Rashid said you qualify. We just need to $8,000 per cycle." Catherine's eyes were clear despite the morphine, sharp, with the terrible clarity of someone who'd accepted their own mortality and was now trying to protect their child from repeating the mistake. "Alara, sweetheart, where are you going to find $32,000? "I'll find it." Alara's voice came out fierce, almost angry. "I'm working doubles. I'll pick up more shifts. You'll work yourself to death." "Then I'll die trying." Catherine reached for her daughter's hand. Her grip was weak, the bones burred fragile beneath skin that had become translucent, showing veins like rivers on a map leading nowhere good. "Baby, I need you to hear me. I'm 53 years old. I've had a good life. You're 28. You have so much living left to do. I won't let you destroy yourself trying to buy me time. I might not even." "Don't." Alara's voice cracked like ice under pressure. "Don't you dare give up. Don't you dare tell me it's okay to let you die. I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic. Realistic is finding a way. Realistic is fighting." Alara swiped at tears with the back of her hand, angry at herself for crying, angrier at the universe for making this a choice between her life and her mother's. "Dad would have fought." Catherine flinched as if slapped. Thomas Wynne, Charleston firefighter, had died in a warehouse fire when Alara was 16, had gone back into a burning building, searching for people who weren't there because he believed impossible. Rescues were the only kind worth attempting. "Your father was brave and reckless in equal measure," Catherine said softly. They sat in silence, surrounded by the beeping of monitors and the distant sound of nurses' soft-soled shoes. Finally, Alara spoke. "There was something strange at work tonight." She told her mother about Carter, the worn jacket and the massive credit limit, the way he'd barely touched his expensive meal, the intelligence in his eyes that didn't match his disguise. "And I did something stupid," Alara admitted. "I warned him about the food substitutions." Catherine's eyes widened. Alara, if Nolan finds out... I know. Her mother studied her face with the particular intensity of women who'd spent decades reading their children's expressions. This man at the restaurant. Something about your story makes me think he's not what he appears to be. What do you mean? Just a feeling. Your father always said, people who hide their power are either cowards or strategists. Catherine squeezed her hand. And the way you describe this man, he doesn't sound like a coward. 3 figures in navy coveralls approached La Vela's loading dock at 10:30 p.m., their uniforms embroidered with Apex Commercial Cleaning in yellow thread that caught the streetlight. The tallest carried a floor buffer. The woman with silver hair pulled into a severe ponytail pushed a supply cart. The third, a lean man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow like a lightning strike, carried a toolbox that was heavier than any collection of wrenches had a right to be. To any observer, they were exactly what they claimed, a contracted cleaning crew arriving for the graveyard shift. But Lysander Cole didn't typically buff floors. Cassandra Vale didn't normally push supply carts. And Raven, just Raven, no last name, offered or requested, definitely didn't do janitorial work, unless that work involved bypassing security systems he'd personally installed. Service entrance code is 4729, Cassandra murmured, consulting a tablet hidden beneath cleaning rags. Security goes to night mode at 10:15. Motion sensors disabled on ground floor until 6 a.m. Cameras still active. Cameras are always active, Raven said, his Israeli accent softening the consonants. But their DVR system is, how do you say, shit. 12-hour loop, compressed files. By tomorrow night, tonight's footage will be overwritten. Lysander punched in the code. The door clicked open with the sound of conspiracy becoming action. The restaurant after closing was a different creature entirely. Without soft lighting and jazz, it was just a space. Exposed, honest, stripped of pretense. Dining room chairs sat stacked on tables like sleeping animals. The smell of bleach warred with residual seafood odors. A single security light cast shadows long enough to hide in. Nolan's office is second floor, northwest corner, Lysander said, his voice low. Cassandra, you're on basement inventory records. Raven, you're with me. What am I looking for? Cassandra asked. Invoices? Supplier contracts? Anything showing substitutions? Alara's note mentioned import goods being switched. Find the paper trail. They separated like ghosts dispersing. Lysander and Raven climbed to the second floor, where administrative offices sat above the dining room like a parasitic crown. Nolan's door was locked, standard commercial deadbolt, laughably simple. Raven had it open in 40 seconds without damaging the mechanism, his picks moving with the precision of a surgeon. Inside, the office screamed insecurity disguised as success. A fake Rolex sat in a glass case like a museum piece. Framed certificates from culinary institutes that didn't exist. A motivational poster. Excellence is not a skill, it's an attitude. Guy's a walking cliche, Raven muttered. They searched systematically. Desk drawers yielded schedules and catalogs. But the filing cabinet was different. Folders labeled staff records contained notes about employees that made Lysander's jaw tighten. Alara Wynn, mother terminal cancer, medical debt $23,000 plus. Will accept additional duties to secure advancement pay. Do not allow contact with corporate. Lysander photographed every page, each one evidence of weaponized vulnerability. Boss, Raven called from behind the bookshelf. I found a safe, and it was small, maybe 12 by 12 inches, built into the wall behind a framed photo. Raven pulled out his toolkit. Precision picks, a stethoscope, a laptop running decryption software. While Raven worked, Lysander examined Nolan's computer. Password protected, but there was a post-it note stuck to the monitor. Charleston Elite 2023. Idiot, Lysander murmured, logging in. The emails were damning. An entire thread with Victor Kozlov at Neptune Imports confirmed everything. Substituted seafood, contamination warnings ignored, criminal negligence dressed in profit margins. Got it, Raven announced. The safe swung open, revealing stacks of cash in a leather folder containing parallel accounting ledgers. Lysander photographed everything, his hands steady despite the rage burning in his chest. We have enough, he said finally. Tomorrow, I end this. The 3 figures froze in the BMW's headlight beams like deer on a midnight highway, caught in that terrible moment between discovery and disaster. Raven's hand moved instinctively toward his toolbox. Lysander knew there was a taser in there, possibly worse, but Cassandra hissed through clenched teeth. Stay in character. Nolan's BMW parked crookedly across 2 spaces, the way men park when they believe the world should accommodate them. The door opened and he emerged, slightly unsteady. His Tom Ford suit rumpled and his tie loosened. Even from 15 feet away, the bourbon smell rolled off him in waves thick enough to taste. What the hell are you doing here? His words slurred, just slightly, consonants bleeding into vowels. Lysander stepped forward, adopting a slouched posture, making himself smaller, less threatening. Evening, sir. Apex Commercial Cleaning. We're scheduled for Thursday nights, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Nolan squinted at them, his eyes struggling to focus in the parking lot's sodium lights. I don't remember approving an overnight crew. Corporate schedule, sir, Cassandra said in a thick Boston accent that sounded nothing like her actual voice. You want, I can call the dispatch supervisor, but she's going to be pissed. Getting woken up at theatrical watch check, 11:20 on a Thursday. The mention of corporate made Nolan hesitate. Lysander knew this psychology intimately. Middle managers lived in terror of things that came from above without their knowledge. It suggested they weren't as in control as they claimed. What's your company name again? Apex Commercial Cleaning, Raven said in a bored monotone. We do all the Coal Dominion properties. You want to see the work order? He produced a clipboard with an authentic-looking form because it was authentic. Raven had forged it using Coal Dominion's actual vendor management system 2 hours ago. Nolan snatched the clipboard, studied it with eyes that kept losing focus. This says ground floor only. Why were you upstairs? Shit. Lysander's mind moved at the speed of survival. Restroom on the second floor. Your ground floor staff bathroom lock's busted. Told myself I'd mention it, but I guess I forgot. Sorry, boss. Nolan's suspicion warred with his intoxication and natural laziness. The calculation was visible on his face. Investigate fully, which required effort and sobriety. Or assert dominance and move on. Dominance won. Next time, use the staff restroom near the kitchen. Upstairs is off limits. He shoved the clipboard back. And tell your supervisor I want a different crew. I don't like your attitudes. Yes, sir, Cassandra said with exaggerated deference. Nolan headed toward the entrance, pulling out his key card. He was going inside. If he went to his office and noticed anything out of place. Sir, before you go in, we did find something you should know about. Nolan turned. What? Leak in the basement, near the water heater. Nothing major yet, but you'll want to call a plumber before it gets worse. Could cause mold issues. This was true. Cassandra had noticed it. But more importantly, it gave Nolan something to fixate on that wasn't his office. God damn it, Nolan muttered, unlocking the door and heading toward the basement instead of upstairs. They didn't wait. Within 90 seconds, their van was 3 blocks away. Later, at the Charleston Harbor Hotel penthouse, they spread evidence across the dining table. Photos of emails, accounting ledgers, contaminated seafood documentation. Tomorrow morning, Lysander said. 8:30 a.m., during pre-service prep, maximum witnesses. His phone rang at 2:47 a.m. Cassandra breathless. Boss, we have a problem. Nolan just withdrew $120,000 from an offshore account. I think he's running. Elara's alarm didn't wake her at 6:45 a.m. because she'd never actually slept. She'd been lying in bed since 4, staring at ceiling cracks that looked like rivers on a broken map, replaying yesterday's events on an endless loop. The note, the text message from El Carter, the way Nolan had looked at her during the evening shift like he was trying to read her mind through her skull. Her phone showed 47 unread notifications, all from the hospital's patient portal, arriving throughout the night like digital vultures. She opened them with hands that already knew what they'd find. Alert. Treatment plan update required for patient C. Win. Alert. Outstanding balance $27,430. 19. Alert. Insurance coverage maximum reached. Alert. Financial counselor appointment recommended. Each notification was a knife with a different blade. Each one reminded her that time was a currency she couldn't afford and couldn't earn fast enough. She showered in lukewarm water. The building's hot water heater had been broken for 3 weeks, the landlord perpetually forgetting to fix it, and dressed in her black slacks and white shirt with the mechanical precision of someone suiting up for battle. The 15-minute walk to MUSC Medical Center felt longer today. She used to run marathons, back when her body belonged to her instead of to exhaustion and terror. Now she ran from Bill's. In room 847, Catherine slept. Doctor. Rashid was at the nurse's station, his expression carefully neutral in that way doctors practiced. The face they wore when delivering timelines, disguised as treatment plans. Miss Wynn, we need to discuss next steps. The immunotherapy trial, Alara said immediately, the words automatic as breathing. She qualifies, but the first cycle needs to start within 10 days to have any real chance of efficacy. After that, the tumors will likely be too advanced. 10 days, 240 hours, 14,400 minutes between her mother and the end of possibilities. I'm working on the money, Alara said, and hated how her voice sounded. Thin, desperate, like someone drowning who'd just realized screaming doesn't bring lifeguards. She sat with Catherine until 7:30, then walked toward La Vela through morning air that tasted of salt water and impending rain. The restaurant didn't open until 11 for lunch service, but prep started at 8, and Alara had been pulling morning shifts in addition to evening ones, helping with inventory counts and mise en place, accumulating hours like a miser hoarding coins. But as she approached East Bay Street, she saw something that made her stop walking entirely. 3 black SUVs parked in the loading zone, government plates. The kind of vehicles that appeared when situations had moved beyond internal discipline into criminal territory. Her heart stopped, then restarted with painful force. Did someone find out about the note? Was she about to be arrested for defamation? For interfering with business operations? She entered through the service entrance on legs that felt borrowed. The kitchen was silent. No prep music, no banter, no sound of knives on cutting boards. Instead, all 12 staff members stood in the dining room facing the front entrance like an audience waiting for an execution. Nolan was there too, looking more polished than usual. Fresh suit, perfect hair, that fake Rolex catching morning light streaming through the windows. He wore the expression of a man trying very hard to project confidence while his internal organs were liquefying. And standing at the center of it all was a man Alara had never seen before, except she had. Recognition hit her like cold water. The silver-streaked hair professionally styled instead of hidden under a beanie, the worn Carhartt jacket replaced by a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her mother's monthly treatment, the Timex gone to reveal a Patek Philippe that could pay for the entire immunotherapy trial. But the eyes were the same. That quiet intensity, that way of seeing everything. "Good morning, Miss Wynn," L. Carter said in a voice that now carried authority like a second skin. Or should I say, "Mr. Cole would like to speak with you." The room tilted. Behind Lysander Cole stood 3 people, an older woman with silver hair, a black woman in an FBI windbreaker, a man carrying health department credentials. "What's going on?" Alara heard herself ask from very far away. Nolan's face was the color of old bread, his smile the expression of a drowning man pretending he'd meant to jump. "Mr. Cole," Nolan said with forced joviality. "What an unexpected pleasure." "You would have hidden the evidence," Lysander said quietly. "Which is precisely why I didn't inform you." The FBI agent stepped forward, and Alara realized she was watching the moment when everything she'd risked the note for was about to either vindicate her courage, confirm her stupidity. Nolan's Italian leather dress shoes weren't designed for running, but fear is a powerful motivator. He crashed through the swinging kitchen door, took the stairs 2 at a time, his mind racing faster than his feet could manage. The safe, the ledgers, the fake passport with the name Nathan Cross in his photo. If they found those, he wasn't just fired, he was going to prison. Behind him, footsteps pounded up the stairs. That scarred man from last night, the cleaning crew guy who definitely wasn't a cleaner. Nolan reached his office, slammed the door, engaged the deadbolt. It wouldn't hold long, but he didn't need long, just enough time to grab the evidence and run. His BMW had a full tank. The offshore account had $120,000. Mexico was 8 hours away if he drove fast enough. He yanked the framed photo off the wall, revealing the safe. His hands shook violently as he spun the combination. Right twice, left once, right again to the final number. Click. The door swung open. Empty. The cash was gone, the ledgers were gone, the passport was gone. Everything that could prove guilt or provide escape had vanished like smoke. No, 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 no. Nolan tore through the safe's interior as if $40,000 in cash might be hiding. In a 12-inch cube he'd already searched 3 times. "Looking for these?" a voice said. Nolan spun. Lysander Cole stood in the doorway. How did he get in? The deadbolt was... Raven appeared beside him, holding what looked like a lock-picking gun. "Your deadbolt is garbage. 12 seconds. Lysander held up the leather folder containing the parallel accounting ledgers. Nolan recognized it with the sick certainty of a criminal seeing evidence in a prosecutor's hands. "We removed these last night," Lysander said, his voice carrying the cold precision of a judge reading a sentence. "Along with your computer files, your email correspondence with Neptune Imports, and the rejected Indonesian seafood you've been hiding behind the basement water heater." Nolan's brain, trained by years of lying his way out of consequences, scrambled for defense. "You broke into my office. That's illegal search and seizure. Whatever you found is inadmissible." "I own this building," Lysander interrupted. "I own this restaurant. I own every square inch you're standing on. The safe? I purchased it. The computer? Coal Dominion property. Your expectation of privacy extends exactly as far as your employment contract allows, which, according to Section 8, Paragraph 3, grants me full access to all business-related materials." He tossed the folder onto the desk. It landed with a slap that echoed like a gavel. "But you're right. A good lawyer might get some of this thrown out, which is why I also contacted the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. At 6 a.m. this morning, they sent inspectors to Neptune Imports' Charleston warehouse." Lysander stepped closer, and Nolan could see fury burning behind that controlled exterior. "Want to know what they found?" Nolan said nothing. 2 tons of Indonesian seafood stored at unsafe temperatures, product contaminated with Vibrio vulnificus, bacteria that causes flesh-eating disease. Fatality rate of 50% in immunocompromised patients. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. "You served this to customers," Lysander continued. You knew it was contaminated. Victor Kozlov warned you in August, and you served it anyway. No one got sick, Nolan said, hating how his voice sounded. Thin, desperate, exactly like the people he'd spent years intimidating. Because you got lucky. Because random probability protected you from becoming a mass murderer. Lysander's voice dropped to something darker. But luck runs out. And yours ran out the moment you threatened a Lara win. One last play remained. Nolan had survived this long by knowing when to fold. I'll testify, he blurted, against Neptune Imports, against Victor Kozlov. They're the real criminals. I'm just a thief who's afraid of getting caught, Lysander finished. FBI agent Morrison stepped forward with handcuffs that gleamed like promise. As the metal clicked around his wrists, Nolan looked through his office window at the dining room below. The entire staff watched his perp walk with expressions ranging from satisfaction to pity. And standing at the front of that crowd, her face unreadable, was Alara Wynn. Alara followed Lysander Cole out of La Vela and down East Bay Street with her mind spinning too fast to form coherent thoughts. The billionaire who'd ordered water, the man who'd tested them all, the owner of the empire she'd been unwittingly serving while it crumbled from within. They walked in silence until they reached Waterfront Park, where the pineapple fountain sprayed water into morning air, and tourists took selfies with Charleston Harbor as backdrop. Lysander chose a quiet bench overlooking the water. "You're angry," he said. "Not a question." "I don't know what I am." Alara's voice shook despite her best efforts. "You came into my workplace pretending to be someone else. You let me apologize for asking you to pay in advance. I gave you a note that could have gotten me fired. And all along, you were testing you," Lysander finished. "Yes." "Why?" He watched a sailboat navigate toward the marina, his expression distant. 6 months ago, Coal Dominion had 17 formal complaints about workplace harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. 17 separate properties where managers were abusing employees. Corporate investigations turned up nothing because victims were too afraid to speak on record. And then he turned to face her. I realized my company had become too big for me to see what was really happening. Regional VPs gave me polished reports. Quarterly audits showed clean numbers, but the human cost was invisible from my corner office. So you decided to cosplay poverty? The bitterness in Alara's voice surprised even her. I decided to see what people are really like when they think I'm nobody. When there's no incentive to impress me, no fear of consequences, just authentic human interaction. And what did you learn? That someone like you, someone being crushed by medical debt and impossible choices, still found the courage to slip a warning note to a stranger. Alara's eyes burned. Don't make me a hero. I almost didn't give you that note. I almost let you eat contaminated food because I was too scared. But you didn't. That's what matters. No? Alara stood abruptly. What matters is my mother is dying. What matters is I have 10 days to find $32,000. What matters is that while you were playing dress-up, real people were suffering real consequences. Lysander pulled out his phone, opened an email, and handed it to her. Alara read through tears that blurred the words, "To Dr. Anand Rashid, MUSC Oncology from Lysander Cole. Coal Dominion Healthcare Foundation. Subject, Patient Treatment Authorization, Catherine Wynn." The Cole Dominion Healthcare Foundation is authorizing full coverage for Catherine Wynn's immunotherapy trial. Treatment to begin immediately. No financial obligation to the Wynn family. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. This is, sent at 7:15 this morning, Lysander said quietly. "Doctor, Rashid has already scheduled your mother's first treatment for Monday." The world tilted. Alara sat down heavily, her breath coming in gasps that might be laughter or sobs or both. "Why would you do this?" "Because you warned a stranger when it could have cost you everything. Because your mother raised someone with that kind of courage." His voice caught slightly. "When I was 17, living in my 5th foster home, a woman who could barely afford groceries noticed I hadn't eaten for 3 days. She gave me $20. She said, when you can, you pass it forward." He met Alara's eyes. "Your mother's treatment is me passing it forward, but there's more." And he offered her a position, Director of Workforce Ethics and Integrity, $85,000 annually, creating systems to protect employees across all Coal Dominion properties. "Why me?" Alara asked. "Because you risked everything for a stranger. Because when Nolan gave you an impossible choice, you chose truth." Alara looked out at the harbor, at boats finding their way home. "I need to think about it. Take all the time you need." "Lysander?" She used his first name hesitantly. "Why did you choose La Vela specifically?" He pulled out a folded letter, handed it to her. The handwriting was shaky but determined. "Dear Mr. Cole, my daughter Alara works at your restaurant La Vela. Something is wrong there. I'm dying, so I probably won't live to see you fix it. But please, Help the people who work for you. Catherine Wynne. Alara's tears fell freely. She never told me. Mothers protect their children, even when they're the ones who need protecting. Her phone rang. Hospital. Dr. Rashid. Miss Wynne, your mother's latest scans showed something unexpected. Doctor. Rashid's voice on the phone carried careful neutrality, the tone doctors used when trying not to influence how information landed. The scans showed the latest tumors have shrunk, significantly, about 40% reduction in mass since last month. Alara's knees buckled. Lysander caught her arm, steadied her against the bench. What does that mean? She managed. It means your mother's body is responding to standard chemotherapy better than expected. Combined with the immunotherapy trial starting Monday, we have reason for cautious optimism. Cautious optimism. 2 words Alara thought she'd never hear again. They walked back to MUSC together. In room 847, Catherine was sitting up looking stronger. The nurse whispered her pain medication had been reduced, the first reduction in months. Alara introduced Lysander. Catherine studied him with maternal precision. You're the man who pretended to be a handyman. Guilty, Lysander admitted. My daughter gave you a note that could have gotten her fired. She did. It saved my company from a lawsuit that would have destroyed us. Catherine nodded slowly. I like him. He doesn't talk like a billionaire. Over 3 hours they talked. Catherine told stories about Alara's childhood, organizing bake sales for classmates in need, volunteering at animal shelters, turning down a Clemson scholarship to care for her dying father. She's always put everyone else first, Catherine said. This job you're offering her, is it real or charity disguised as employment? It's real, Lysander said. I need someone who understands power dynamics from the bottom up. Your daughter is uniquely qualified. Catherine looked at Alara. What do you want, baby? I want to help people, Alara said finally. I want what happened to me to never happen to anyone else. 6 months later, La Vela Charleston reopened after 4 months of renovations with new management. Marco was executive chef. His wife and daughter finally arrived from Italy. The real change was invisible to diners. The small sign near the employee entrance reading Ethics Hotline, 1-800-COLEHELP. Alara stood in her second-floor office reviewing quarterly reports. In 6 months, the hotline received 347 calls, 42 investigations launched, 19 managers terminated. But the number she treasured most, 89% of employees now felt safe to speak up compared to 23% before. Her mother was in remission. Not cured, the cancer lurked, but controlled. Catherine volunteered at the hospital now, talking to newly diagnosed patients about hope. Lysander entered carrying coffee. Thought you might need this. We got the new contract language approved, Alara said. Protected whistleblower status and mandatory ethics training. Because of you. Because of us, she corrected. They stood at the window watching lunch service begin below. Tourists and locals gathering over food, unaware of the revolution that happened here. Do you ever think about that night? Alara asked. Every day, Lysander admitted. How close I came to walking out? How many variables had to align for me to be at table 3 when you decided to give me that note? Some call it fate. I call it luck. The best kind, where someone's courage intersects with someone else's opportunity to help. Alara's phone buzzed. Her mother, white blood cell count normal for first time in 7 months. Life is weird and beautiful. Below, Marco carried out the first Costa Azul platter. Genuine Maine lobster now, certified sustainable. No lies, just excellence built on integrity. The world measures wealth in bank accounts, in stock portfolios, in square footage and car brands, in zeros that multiply behind dollar signs. But the true billionaire heart knows a different mathematics entirely. It counts courage over comfort, values truth over transactions, measures success not in dollars accumulated, but in lives transformed by the quiet decision to do what's right when wrong would be easier. Lysander Cole disguised himself as poor to discover authentic human connection. What he found was richer than any empire. A woman named Alara, who proved that real wealth is having the strength to choose, right? When choosing wrong would solve all your problems. Some call it justice. Some call it karma. Some call it the universe correcting itself. We call it the billionaire heart, the understanding that the richest life is one spent lifting others, that true power reveals itself not in domination but in protection, and that the only fortune worth having is the one you can share without diminishing yourself. Because at the end of every story, when the credits roll and the lights come up, what remains isn't what we owned. It's who we helped when helping cost us something. This is True Soul Chronicles, where legends aren't born. They're forged in the quiet courage of everyday people who dare to believe that kindness is not weakness, that compassion is not naivety, and that one person choosing truth can change everything. Disclaimer: this story is a work of complete fiction created for entertainment purposes. All characters, businesses, locations, events, and dialogues are entirely fictional and products of creative imagination.